This is Space Cat's Peace Turtles, the unofficial podcast for Fantasy Flight's Twilight Imperium. Episode 37, First Round Strategies Wrap-Up. Music by Ben Prunty, featuring Matt Martens and Hunter Donaldson. Hunter, it's wonderful to be back. We didn't get to touch each other last week. Hunter and I are now touching each other. We're in the same room again, recording over the same microphone in the way you're not supposed to do as professional podcasters. We do it our stupid way that we just love. Mm-hmm. We're back and we're done. We can breathe a sigh of relief. Right, Hunter? The first round strategy guides are done.
Podcast is over. That joke keeps working every single time. Man, they love that.
No,
the podcast isn't over.
No.
That's the whole thing.
Man, there's going to be so much. Today we want to do some stuff. We want to sum up kind of all of our experiences in doing 17 episodes of a thing is a lot, actually.
Right.
There's 17 episodes is longer than a lot of TV shows.
Yeah, that's true.
We've been doing these guides since December, so Hunter and I wanted to take a minute and get a little esoteric on you. And
we've done almost 40 episodes in general. HBO would have chilled 4 times,
So we wanted to kind of talk about just all the guides today and sort of sum up things, make weird sweeping generalizations, but also just talk about where we are at in our TI games strategically based off of having done the guides. We also want to talk about what's next. This was a huge arc of the show that most of you have kind of always known what was coming next because it's they still got to do a Hakan guide at some point. They still got to do that. And now the floodgates have opened and none of you know what to expect. So at the end of today, we're going to talk about where we see ourselves.
We have so much to tease.
We've got a lot.
We started making a list of things to tease you with, and it got kind of out of hand.
Yes.
But yeah, there's so much that we want to do with this show, so much that we still have yet to explore. And honestly, the first round strategy guide format in general was a little bit limiting.
Weird.
A little bit limiting.
Yeah, it felt
I feel
weird.
like we learned a lot doing it that way. But
we're more excited for the future of the show
than
we have been for the past 10 episodes.
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah.
But let's not start with Debbie Downer stuff. I'm so thrilled to be in the same room as Hunter again because last week we recorded remotely and it was...
We're not very good at that, are we?
It was a bit of a disaster. I don't know if the episode, I don't know if you guys could just tell if there was an energy that was off or anything, but we had all kinds of recording issues, and I don't know. I'm just glad we're back doing this.
Can I say what was happening? I just want to say.
Sure.
So basically, when you listen to that episode, when you hear me talk at all, I'm kind of just stabbing in the dark because I, for a lot of the time, could not hear what Matt was saying. So I was just hoping that whatever I was about to say made sense based off what he just maybe said.
And that he wasn't just interrupting me.
Right. That's the other thing, too, is it was he might be literally talking.
I was at my parents' house. I think I said that in the episode, but they have just a notoriously haunted internet connection.
Right, the worst.
And so we were just battling that, and it's, I'm hoping if there's ever a time in this show where Hunter and I aren't in, living in the same place anymore, we're going to have to figure out how to, make that energy come back alive. The main thing will be not recording at my parents' house. But all of that's beside the point. I also played a game last week while I was in Arkansas. I played with our dear friend EJ and Chris and 3 strangers, all who were new to the game.
Has EJ been on the show before? I don't remember.
EJ's been on the show. EJ was in our People Who Play.
Yeah.
And he was on the Holiday Spectacular follow-up episode.
Yes.
He's the one with the deep radio voice.
He's probably, if this was his show, it would be so much more professional. Mm-hmm. If he was the one with the Twilight Imperium show, it would be a way better show. He would be like the John Madden, and he'd be releasing, his video game every year. Does John Madden make those games?
No, I think his name was... I don't think so. He's renowned software developer John Madden.
Also football sports announcer.
Yeah.
So you played a game. Who cares?
Yes, I was Arborek.
Cool.
I just want to talk about how Arborek, so interesting that it remains true that that start is truly terrifying.
It's hard, baby.
And especially when both of your neighbors decide they want a piece of your pie. But if anything, I just kind of want to tell people, go back to our guide. I don't even remember how much we talked about this, but like, if you're getting hurt early as Arborek, my new recommendation is ignore victory points for a round or two. However long it takes to get on your feet, you need to survive, because again, you're a snowball. This is what I did. I got my whole thing sandwiched in on. Most of my pie slice was taken from me. I was basically in my home system and on one other planet, and I had the clan of Sar breathing down my throat. So they could have just kept... They had an asteroid field parked right next to me, and every single turn we're putting out another dreadnought. Just dreadnought, right into my pie slice. And I just said, okay, I can't focus on VPs at all. I just don't. Maybe that throws the whole game for me. But if I try to go for VPs and save myself, I won't be able to do both.
Right.
And so I focused for like 2 rounds purely on holding him back until I could get him in a position where I said, okay, now we're on even footing. Let's stop this. Let's have some sort of promissory note exchange and we'll cancel this. And I'd been building enough ground forces that whole time, because ground forces are cheap, and on top of whatever other units I needed, I was then, even though I'd been attacked for like 3 rounds, able to turn my snowball on, and I still was able to pump out even more ground forces and then start swinging huge fleets out there.
Yeah.
And I still won the game. I came from like a 3 or 4 point deficit, but in the last 2 rounds just swung so many points.
How many rounds did you not score a point at all, you think?
At least 2.
Oh.
At least 2 rounds of no points.
Wow.
Yeah, it was bad. It was very bad. But the last round I scored like 4 or 5.
Nice.
So, I think what it was is I swung to a 9-point lead. I got to 9 points. I got 4 points in the second to last round. And then the last round was just like, and now just hold on. The last point is guaranteed. You just make sure. I had like 2 other people that were ahead of me in initiative. Just had to hold them back. And no one could take my home system. So it was just a hold on until the status phase final round.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all it took. But yeah, so hang in there, Arborex. You can make it out, and I just wanted to bring that point up because I feel like we've even seen other games where an Arborek gets one bad move early, and you kind of tend to think, well, I have a bad start, and I just had a bad thing happen to me. Looks like my game is just completely gone. And it's not. Again, you are never out in TI. Too many random things can happen to pull you back into the fray.
You just got to keep laying down those roots.
Keep
growing that, big plant matter, right? Mm-hmm. Let me tell you about a game I played recently. Just kidding. I've been taking a break.
Hunter took a well-deserved break because Hakan nearly broke him.
I actually said that it's weird. When I got done with the Hakan guide, I was like, I'm going to take a month off from TI. And it's been 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I'm ready to play.
Yeah.
That's all I needed. Yeah. I just needed some... I was beating my head up against the wall trying to come up with every single possible thing you should have to say about Hakan, which was so just, oh my God.
Yeah, it was too easy because in Jolnar, I didn't have to say anything. Jolnar was just, you can do anything, and that's always true. And there literally isn't a right answer. But Hakan, it was like, you can do anything. And sometimes you fall flat on your face.
Yeah,
and
I think in that episode I realized, because I kind of thought I was going to get to kind of do that same thing for the Jolnar episode that you did, which was essentially like, here, just look at the whole tech path. Yeah. That's that. There you go.
Right.
But it didn't. It did not end up. That's not how it felt. Actually, playing Hakan, it did not feel like it felt like you were just playing your whole new game with its own rules. What are we doing? Here we go. What's this episode?
So talking about, to jump off of like talking about Hakan and Jolnar, like it is interesting to me to look back at these guides because why did we start them in the first place? Why did we decide to do this arc?
Well, I think originally the thought was like, we're going to try and cover every race. Obviously, that seemed like the thing that made sense to do. But
People
also
were asking for that.
Right. And the idea of a first round strategy guide, it just seemed like the easiest thing to actually kind of sum up.
Yes.
Was like, because there's less chaos at the beginning of the game. You always start with the same tech, the same units, the same home system.
I compare this to why we did the learn to teach episode.
Yeah.
Because people have even since then suggested, like, why don't you guys do a learn to play? Like, give us how you guys teach TI. And in my mind, there's already a billion resources out there, and every group gets taught differently. So we wanted to go further back from that and just like strip it down to its basics. And so doing first round guides was that same idea of like, I can't tell you how to play that whole faction overall.
Right.
Now, this is how we started things. This is where we came from when we wanted to start these guides, was just like, we'll just do a one-round guide. And then that one round turned into, well, you can't talk about the first round without talking about what your mid-game goals are. Like, you're doing your first round in service of a larger strategy. And by the end of these guides, we really were doing entire game guides, but we tried to, the only definitive information we ever tried to give you was round one. Because beyond round one, there's just never, like, there's no assurances that anything is going to be reliable information.
Yeah.
The only round that has any somewhat static info is round one. And what we learned over the course of these guides is even that is not enough. Like, your seating order is going to change what strategy cards are even available to you. So it became very difficult to suggest strategy cards to you, because it's kind of like, well, we have to just suggest half the deck. Because, or make a case for half the deck. The other thing is your starting units drastically change it. The planet makeup of your system can change what is even available to you. And so what we thought of a pretty static, like we can at least talk about round one, turned into, you kind of can't even make any assumptions about round one.
Right.
And so I think why you see maybe us having more difficulty with those later guides is we started to nail that aspect down, and we didn't want to do a disservice to, you know, the all 17 guides. So it's like, well, we still got to hammer it out, but we couldn't recommend the same things we had been recommending in the first couple guides, because your guys' errata had helped us find out how many things we suggested didn't work.
Right.
And B, the more games we played, just in general, we started to see the things that are not as reliable as we had thought they might be.
Yeah, and I think it also just kind of comes down to, so they grew, right? They weren't just they were never really first round strategy guides. But also, if you listen to, you know, all 17 of them, they have a lot of different ways that they function in general.
Yes.
Some of them are literally like almost down to build order type. Yeah, like Mentak.
The Mentak guide is do this and this and this.
Right.
And that will give you success. Versus, like we were just saying, the Jolnar guide is almost the polar opposite of that. We have no suggestions.
Right,
for
no
you.
specific anything. And so, yeah, like each guide sort of, I wish we could have just like kind of retooled the title of like it, not a first round strategy guide, but it's like, this is a variable race game, right? So each race has different powers, and just by nature of that, they're going to have different types of strategy guides that make sense for them. I mean, our Barony episode is wildly different from everything else.
Yeah, exactly. By the midway point, we were just starting to play with the structure of the guides themselves, because the sort of checklist we had been writing kept not fitting in with certain factions, and so we'd have to go back to the drawing board and just like, okay, well, how do we define this faction in completely new ways? So what the other thing you see that turn into is us like realizing more and more and more that there are tons of options that every faction has at their disposal.
Right.
To a certain extent, for us to give a guide where we're going to recommend one idea is sort of ridiculous, because this game doesn't function on that level.
Right.
Which is why by the end, you hear us always saying, we're going to suggest the most conservative. In the first guides, we were doing the same thing, but we were calling it the best option. You know, this is what you need to do as X-Cha. But by the end, we had to say, this is the most conservative thing you can do as the Hakan.
Right.
Because by that point we had decided nothing is like a, sacrosanct, like proven going to win every time, except for maybe Soul.
There's so many. Yeah, exactly. Soul is just kind of different, but there's so many moving parts in the game that you could totally take all of our strategy guides and be like, I'm going to go by this like to the T and lose a lot,
right?
Because you're playing based on a static idea of two people talking about the game and not the very real dynamic situation that is actually playing Twilight Imperium. But I'll say this: I think that if we could do it all again, I probably would have wanted to do more episodes like how we did the Barony episode.
Right.
I think we kind of had these two modes. With Barony, the amount of work we put into that episode, like compared to everything else,
days.
is really insane. And I think it's because both me and you just kept looking at it and being like,
it's not enough.
Well, like I would just poke and prod at it and be like, what about this? What about this? And then we just beat it out into like 4 episode chunks. But like, honestly, that's probably more like, it was either we were going to do that with every race and it was going to take forever and we would still be on like the 5th or 6th race.
Right.
Or we pick one of those slices, one of those ideas for each faction, and then just kind of be like, all right, which one do we feel like is the safest one of all of these?
Right.
But honestly, the second we did the Barony episode, that kind of blew my mind as far as like how ridiculous this whole like way of doing it kind of was. Yeah. Like I feel like we learned a lot in doing that episode. If you really listen back to all of them, there's so many different attitudes that we take. Yeah. Basically,
if I had one takeaway for you, the listener, to have from all of these and from this episode, it's sort of like those guides. I think they're useful, and I'm glad we did them. I'm glad we kind of were able, for brand new players especially, who come to the table and go, I don't even know what the Sardak Nor is. Right. I need some kind of roadmap.
Right.
I think it is useful for that. For more experienced players, you're going to know that in any game, you got to roll with the punches. Right. So you will not be able to follow any of those guides to a T, and to some extent, not at all. Like, there were multiple times where I told myself, I'm going to try out this strategy with this faction, but then I would get a certain tech specialty in my pie slice and be like, no, I have to see how far this other thing can go because I have the opportunity to do it.
Oh, and can we talk about like how crazy it is to even play Twilight Imperium the way that we had been playing it? Like sitting down to play a game of TI with like I would do this thing where the first game I would play with the faction, I would be like, all right, let's try and get the faction tech.
Yeah.
Because we got to know.
Gotta know if it's good enough.
Because you can't just theory craft everything. Like the economy of the game is so important.
Right.
That like there are things that aren't going to sound that great. Like I had to try the Muat like supernova thing, and I never liked it. And like I didn't like the idea of it. I would read it and I'd be like, this is such a goofy ability.
But sometimes we did those things and we were pleasantly surprised. Like, so you always have to test it. So that's the thing is, we were doing science with all of these factions, and doing science in TI is exhausting because there are so many variants thrown at you that you can't do perfect science.
Right.
This is why we always dog on the hard work that the people doing the TI rankings are doing. They're trying to take as much information as they can, and it's something we should all keep doing. Always submit your games to the TI rankings.
Right.
But the point is, you need tens of thousands of games before you actually find any true trends.
Right.
And so even within ourselves, for me as a player, I need to play 1,000 games before I know the truth of something, because there are that many variables in every single individual game. You can never, know one thing works.
Oh god, and then applying what you just said to like all of the strategy guides, like they are all wildly different in the amount of research that was done for them, especially the stuff towards the beginning. A lot of those guides are not based on very much research.
Well, I was trying to the past few weeks I've been trying to re-listen to some old ones and just make sure I know where we were. And more than anything, I was pulling up our outlines. Hunter and I type up an outline and we talk through the episode before each episode when we record it. And we have all the outlines for every guide we did, except for Xcha. Just doesn't exist. There just is no outline. We were just going completely rogue.
Are you serious?
There is no Xcha outline. Either we deleted it, or I'm pretty sure it just never existed. We were just like, what are we going to talk about?
And that was the first one that we did.
That was the very first one we did.
So literally what we're telling you is that over the course of these episodes, it went from me and Matt are literally just sitting here saying what we think off the top of our heads. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
To like, we should probably post like the Barony, like outline because it's insane.
It's madness.
It's so much detail. It's probably, honestly, that document's probably better than even the episode because there's so much information in that episode that it's probably, after a while, your head is just like,
we contradict ourselves because we go on tangents, but the structure of the outline itself is actually a little bit more reliable.
Yeah. Well, so what kind of trends do we feel like we noticed?
Yeah.
Like, there are some things I feel like we've realized in playing as much as we have that seem to be true, like, kind of across the board. Like things that, where it doesn't really matter what faction you're playing, if you can do this and this, that tends to go well.
Right.
I think the most obvious one is tech.
Yeah.
And, like, starting with tech.
Right.
Starting with 2 tech. Starting with tech where there's an efficient tech.
I think it's a weird balance of, like, the factions that have 2 tech, I think if they didn't have 2 tech, they are all still crazy powerful factions, but there is something to be said for if you start with 2 tech, you are halfway through one of the objectives, whereas everyone else is a quarter or 0% of the way through completing an objective. So yeah, the starting tech is hugely important. Starting units is a big deal too. I mean, that's why we eventually came to, like, we wanted to have a definition for 2C4I. We realized as we were going along that it was very important to have a definition of what does it mean to have the optimal start, and 2C4I is what that became. So anyone with 1C, any amount of I, you have a problem you have to fix round 1. And knowing that about your faction, being able to look at the back of your sheet and go, 2 carriers, and, like, no dreadnought or nothing to carry other units, that's my first problem I need to solve.
Right.
And I think that is a generic truth that works with everyone, that if you, for any new player that looks at a sheet, if you see 1 carrier, that's something you need to fix round 1.
Right.
Same goes for, like, 2 infantry. Okay, I need 2 more infantry at least, or whatever. And if you start with 1 tech, you need to figure out what your path is going to be very quickly because you start with limited access.
Or if you start with 0 tech.
With 0.
Well, I mean, yeah, like how have we seen that it? How does it feel like it's shaking up? As far as how are people winning games, like across the board? What do we see as, like, trends with how do people win Twilight Imperium really?
Right.
I think the my favorite trend seems to be how much more important infantry has become.
Yep. I've gotten to a point. I've gotten to a point where I'm trying to get infantry too with just every faction, just to see.
Yeah.
Just to see what happens. Mentak, let's see what happens when I get infantry too. Because the problem with the green tree is Neural is amazing. Daxiv is pretty good if you're going for infantry 2.
Right.
Infantry 2 is the best unit upgrade in the game.
Right.
Hypermetabolism is amazing. The only weak point in the green tree is the final point that you don't need. Like, you just don't go for X89 and you're fine.
Right.
But, like, everything else in there is powerful. So every faction can technically do pretty well if you just go for green.
Yeah.
Now that ignores a lot of your, Mentak can do much, much better if they go for yellow and get mirror computing.
Sure.
But I do think that, like, getting infantry, we realized, is just hugely important. And the factions that already have innate abilities that make their infantry even better, getting infantry 2 just completely clinches games for you. You can become an unstoppable force.
And it's mostly just because you can then make a Mechatol play and, like, actually make it work.
Right.
Basically.
Any other faction has a lot of trouble keeping Mechatol, but if you've got killer ground forces and you move in, it's yours, and you don't need to, like, freak out about trying to get Imperial before you lose Mechatol. Now you just have Mechatol, and sometime you might have access to Imperial, and you're going to get a free point out of it. Whoop-de-dee.
I want to go on a quick tangent real quick. I want to know, like, off the top of our heads, what do we feel like was the race that we called the Wrong Ggest? Like, that in our learning about the game, our idea of how that faction was going to play and how it actually played and how our actual experiences playing that faction, which one swung the most, do we feel like?
For me, I think I can't say this is wrong, but I think I misrepresented the Nalu Collective.
Yeah.
Pretty severely. I do think gumming up the works is an important thing for them to do, but because I put such a focus on that, I think newer players will miss the bigger point, which is the Nalu Collective have this ability that allow them to score points earlier. So as long as you are having a good game all around, the only other thing you need to do is slow down your opponents.
Right.
Because you will score before them. So as long as you can make sure they're doing a little bit worse than you, you're just going to win. And so I feel like my focus on the Nalu episode got too much on, like, how do I make sure you gum up people's works? But when you play Nalu, you don't actually just sit there and, like, bleed into everyone's territory with your fighters. You don't have time to do that. You do that when it is advantageous and when you can. And yes, you do rush for Neuroglaive so that at the very least they don't get into your works. But it's not like you're just flooding the entire board with fighters. You won't have the production capacity. You won't have the command counters to do that. And so I think that was my biggest mistake. Was sort of selling the Nalu as though they're just going to be able to completely screw up everyone's game and win in the meantime. It's like, no, you need to play a solid game as Nalu, and if you play solid and keep your closest competitors a little bit behind you, that's where you'll clinch a victory.
You got excited about what the Nalu can do that no one else can.
And it's because it came right off the back of me playing against Nalu, where they gummed up my works, it shut down. By round 3, I was done. It was over. There was nothing else I could do because any action I wanted to take was going to cost me a command counter.
Yeah.
It is devastating if Nalu just decides, I'm just going to invade that person's pie slice because I have Neuroglaive now, and now I just can do whatever I want. And it's going to constantly cost them a fleet supply, which means units and command counters and everything you need. And yeah, it was absolutely horrible. But in that game, that Nalu player didn't even win. So it's hard to say, like, that's a winning strategy. It's just a terrifying thing to be up against. And so my guide was hugely influenced off of just, like, how afraid I was of what Nalu could be capable of if that got out of control.
Yeah. Well.
What about you, Hunter? You didn't make any mistakes?
I mean, I think if you listen to this arc of the show, we sound like so stupid when it comes to Soul, Federation of Soul. If you actually listen back to the beginning, we're like, we don't get it. What's good about it? Yeah, right. And it's so I think it makes both of us. I like to throw both of us under the bus. I don't like to just throw myself. I think it was tough on our credibility that we didn't get it.
Right.
And that we did, once we did get it, we have since then just been like, wow,
Soul's
they're really
ridiculous.
good. Wow,
yeah.
we almost went from being like, I don't think they're that good to like, they're broken, dude. Like, and yeah. I think that kind of sucks.
Yeah. I'll say this. I'm trying to be more open about my relationship with the Yin Brotherhood nowadays. I do think
how dare
we were here's where my reaction to the Yin Brotherhood came from. It was when the game first came out, all anyone wanted to talk about was how cool it is to blow up your destroyers and kill other people's stuff. So initially my reaction was, that's ridiculous. That's definitely bad.
Right.
So I cannot be another person that tries to suggest Yin is good because everyone's going to assume I'm talking about how good Devotion is. But Devotion isn't the good ability, and it took a while before we decided to settle in and really dig into Yin and decide, some new terms to define them on. And I think the end result is a pretty good faction. I just never want I don't want new players to be misled into thinking the terrorist, aggressive approach of what seems natural for Yin, that is bad. That is a bad strategy. But there's another route that is very good with Yin, and you have to just not play into your first instinct. Mm-hmm. And so it's things like that I'm glad we turned around on over the course of the guide.
So you're glad that we don't feel the same way about Yin, like just for the record, so that we just have it. So are we retiring the Yin bit? Like, is that done now?
No, I'll never retire the bit.
Yeah, dude, I'm tired of hearing you talk like it's like you've been converted.
Okay, here's the thing.
Indoctrinated.
I can like the Yin Brotherhood, but I'll always hate Jatapake. So it's easy. So now there's two different parts of the Yin lore.
Right.
And so,
so
our mortal enemy is Jada Pake. So I can continue.
So there's the Matt Brotherhood and then the Jada
Exactly. There are
Brotherhood.
two. Come join
the
us.
Mata and Jada Brotherhoods.
Come join the Mata-hood of Yin, please.
That would be cool if we
are the Yang Brotherhood.
Sure.
Thank
All right.
you.
Yeah.
He's the Yin Brotherhood. We're the Yang Brotherhood.
Right. I would like to play a game with Jada where you're both playing as the Yin Brotherhood. That would be really fun. And yeah, he can play. He can lean into devotion as much as he wants, and you can.
Well, he can do it about 4 times, and then his fleets are gone. So.
Well, yeah. So we still feel pretty spicy about the Yin. that has not really changed. What do you feel like? What guide do you feel like took the most out of you? Like that was hard. Like the one that
Ghosts of Creus.
Oh man, that one was so crazy for you.
Yeah,
that was really hard.
I hated that because that was the one where I was trying everything, and it wasn't just that it was like, I didn't get a win. It was like I tried it and I got dead last. My game was terrible. What is the secret to these guys? Like that one was. It was. That was the part of the show where I was like, why am I even here? Like if I can't do anything with the Ghosts of Creus, how do I have any leg to stand on?
Dude, and you're on a hot streak right now of
Right, exactly. I'm doing really well, but there was a period there where I was like, I hadn't won a game in a couple months and couldn't even do well at all as Ghost, and I was just like, I don't have any right to be doing this podcast.
I miss my hot streak. I remember when I had a hot streak.
Your hot streak was early, yeah.
Yeah, man, I loved my hot streak.
What was your weak point?
That Muat guide nearly took me.
Yeah.
And you know what? Didn't I do Sardak and Muat back to back?
Yeah, well, that's the thing is it was like Muat into Sardak into Hakan. Like, we didn't realize we saved like some of the most difficult ones for last. You had always assumed Hakan was going to be easy.
Yeah, so I just thought Hakan was going to be like a joy.
Right.
Like candy.
Relief at the end of the tunnel of Muat Sardak.
But we had built up, like, the way that we were covering the factions had evolved so much that by the time we got to Hakan, I was like, this is going to be... Yeah. Like an essay.
Yeah.
Like this is like a term paper now. When we started, like we said, we don't even know where the extra outline is.
Right.
So like when we started, we were just shooting from the hip. Whatever. I feel like in the extra guide we didn't even really cover their faction abilities as like
I don't know that we did.
Because I enjoyed the heck out of their faction abilities when we did that stream. Remember I won on stream.
Yeah.
That's something I've done. Oh wait, you've done that too.
I've done that.
Man. You've done that twice?
You've done it twice. There's the one that you don't call a win. Your Sardak win, you refuse to call a win.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't count wins unless you get all the way.
All the points.
Yeah, all the points. It's just a weird little thing.
Just a weird thing.
It's like I only count a win if you get all the points that you need to win.
Well, so I want to go back. We were talking about like more generalizations we can make. You know, we talked about like we realized infantry are really good. What are other... I think we realize there are branches of factions.
Yeah.
So I don't want to call this a tier list we would eventually do, because within each section I'm talking about, there's very good factions and very bad factions. Mm-hmm. But you have your infantry-focused factions that I kind of all deem as Mechatol-based, because if you are great with infantry, there's almost no reason not to go for Mechatol.
Yeah, it's really silly, too. If you go back and listen to the Sol episode, I keep doing this thing in it where I'll be like, you need to get gravity drive and you need to get ready to go after Mechatol or some other system that might be good. And it's like, why? I don't know why I kept building that. We had so much uncertainty all the time where we would just be trying to...
We were terrified of the errata. We are afraid of you all. I want you to know how afraid of you all we are. Every time we say anything, we're like, you know what, how could this get errataed on us?
I'm not afraid anymore.
I'm not afraid anymore.
Like, that's the thing is, like, we have been wrong so many times.
Yep.
And, you know, I still get like some fire in my heart for like some of the things. Like, I mean, one of the things that I got really wrong was if you listen to the Arborek episode, I recommend diplomacy.
Yikes.
Picking diplomacy, which is something that
I recommended diplomacy a couple times too. Like Mentak, I recommended it, and
yeah, now that is completely, the meta is so against, like, it's so just the opinion. And I get it, too, because when someone else would pick diplomacy, I would be like, man, I'm gaining a lot out of this. And that's the thing. It's like, I get the logic now.
Yeah.
But it just sucks that you know, there is a recording of me out there saying
Diplomacy's
something that
pretty good.
Right, I completely disagree with that.
Yeah, there's plenty of other routes with Arborec to get that $7 that you need.
Well, I mean, I think it just comes down to like, that $7 though, if you're getting it through diplomacy, how much are you giving up?
Right.
Like, you're letting everybody make so much money round one.
It's true. I think the other branch that we sort of discovered, I almost just want to call this the X-Chaw branch, but like Jolnar can do this if they want.
So can Mentak.
So can Mentak. There's the PDS factions basically, and the idea that PDS are pretty amazing if you get them in the right areas, if you stack them up just right. But the problem there is it's kind of purely defensive. So the big scary point for me with X-Chaw is always, if you focus too much on just PDS, you'll never score any points.
Yeah.
And so the factions that are really good are the ones that can get the PDS out there and also score points. That's why Mentak is such a good PDS race. It's like you still also have these cruisers that go out and do crazy shenanigans while having a really well-defended pie slice.
Well, honestly, it's fitting that there aren't that many races that we would classify as PDS races, because that's the whole thing that makes it a viable strategy. The people that are good at it, construction is generally up for grabs.
Yep.
And like, if you that's the thing I like about actually going PDS is it feels like in most games, if you want to be the one that goes PDS, you're like, well, I'm going to get it.
I'm going to
There's not as much competition
really well
for
with
them.
that.
If I feel like I need to get 2 tech in a round, well, better take politics this round, like, you don't have to worry about construction. You can be last and you'll probably get it. Like there's a chance someone else will take it. I don't want to. Sometimes don't get me.
New players love construction too. In general, I've found.
Yeah.
Just it takes a few games before you're like, construction is not that great.
Right.
Unless I'm like digging into it.
Right.
I think another branch that we kind of uncovered for ourselves is just the people that can do tech comfortably.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to be getting tech, but we had some guides where it's like, oh, you're going to have to go out of your way to get 2 tech and 2 colors, and it's going to be really uncomfortable to pull that off. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the factions where it's just kind of like, Barony Oletnev and Jolnar, they just get whatever tech works best for them. You never get anything out of the way, pretty much.
Yeah.
Unless you have to get Majin or something like that. But in most cases, you're just getting what fits into your streamlined approach of like, I'm going to need this tech, and look at that. It's right there along the way, and everything just works. Mentak is a great tech race. Get some yellow, get your cruiser 2s, like everything flows into each other.
God, we've been seeing so much mirror computing lately, too. Like, I just feel like all the time.
There's no reason not to. Yeah. Especially because there was a period there where I think there was a period where we were afraid of Mentak not doing so hot because there were a couple games where we had trouble getting trade goods, but that has flipped back around. Similar to like how our Hakan thing, our storyline with Hakan was like, there was a period where people really dogged on Hakan and didn't let them get away with anything, and now we're back to sort of an equilibrium. Right. Mentak has had that same thing happen. Mentak is back to making money in our group. They don't make gobs and gobs and gobs of money, but like you're getting some trade goods off of a couple people per round.
I think it's just really useful that Mentak has that pre-fire ability, and so they don't have to invest as much energy into fleets. Right. So like they can make do with cruisers through the mid game. Right. They don't have to gun for a big fleet. In general, actually, I kind of want to talk about fleets like overall for the game. Yeah. I feel like fleets, the stock in fleets, in my eyes, has gone down a little bit.
Yeah. They are worse than in TI3 for sure, and even just in our minds for TI4 over the course of it. Yeah, I tend to not care very much if I don't have enough ships, because it's like, at some point, if I get enough ground forces on planets, I'll have a round at some point where I can pump out one good fleet.
Right.
And I'll win the game with my one good fleet.
Right.
But like, getting ground forces out there and at the very least just defending my pie slice enough tends to be all that I need.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like all of the factions that are a little less like fleet heavy, kind of their stock, I feel like rose a little bit. Mm-hmm. Everybody across the board except for like just the poor man factions. And then all of the factions that are kind of fleet specialists, I'm thinking L1, Barony, goes to Creus even. Like, I feel like their stocks went down a little bit. It's not the same across the board, and I'm not saying that Barony or L1 are bad.
But generally
factions.
speaking, fleets don't earn you as many objectives.
Right.
As all the other mechanics of the game.
Yeah.
The last branch is sort of the idea that there's just these factions that you get ahead in economies. We talked about this with, like, I said this with the Yin Brotherhood, in that the Yin Brotherhood don't have this. The Yin Brotherhood do not have any innate way of making some sort of economy. For some factions, it's command counters, like the Necro or Soul. You just, like, get more command counters than anybody else, and that's a part of the game you don't have to worry about, so you get to expend more effort into other areas of the game. Hakan, theoretically, trade goods, may attack, the same thing.
Isn't that crazy, though? It's such a change from how we used to think about Hakan. When you bring up Hakan getting trade goods, there's a
question.
Yeah, there's a question. That's crazy. I think about Isarl having action cards, having just more than everybody else.
Any faction that starts with Neural Motivator.
Yeah.
That's a boon to them. Or if it's like an obvious first tech grab for some factions to get Neural. The other thing, too, is like, Barony and their resources. That's a big deal. The fact that Barony just always have this amazing $6 at their disposal.
Yeah.
And the, two extra fleet supply, that's 2 extra command counters through the course of the game. Like, just people that don't have to worry about certain economies, you get to pull off a lot more fun stuff. All the factions that really lack in economies, like Winu, Sardak to a certain extent, Arborek early, these things that struggle with different economies, they're the ones that you find yourself having trouble winning games because you're constantly combating against the economy of the game in addition to the other players. Because Soul doesn't have to worry about command counters, you can focus all of your energy on taking out your opponents.
Yeah.
And you see weird balances there.
I wonder, what do you think about the overall, like, kind of, I don't want to start talking about tier lists, but I want to talk about the overall balance of the factions. How balanced do you feel we are at? Because I feel like a lot of the factions got better. Like, I feel like there's a majority factions are just good.
Yep.
But the factions that are stinkers, I feel like stick out more like sore thumbs now.
I think you have your S tier. And I'm at the point of, really, I'm only willing to call Soul and Jolnar S tier.
Sure.
Then you have a really huge
everything
else.
Lots of good factions would go in that next tier.
Exactly. Because all of those factions do extraordinarily well based on a bunch of different circumstances.
Yeah.
And then you have your low tier. And that's it. You have 3 tiers. You have S, you have basically everyone. There's a little bit of variance in there, but there's so many factors that change that variance. Right. And then you have, like, Winu, Sardak, Muwat.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think Ghosts is down there, but they're not.
They're not.
Had a lot of trouble with them.
Right.
Sometimes I'm still even not on the boat that Sardak is really down there. I think Sardak can have decent games basically if the tech objectives don't come out.
Right.
then if you're okay if the tech objectives don't come out, compared to, like, Muat actually has, like, some significant problems to overcome.
Right.
Sardak Nor can get, like, has good tech that they could eventually get. They start with a good start. They have a good home system. They, there are things that they can pull off that help them compared to Winu and Muat.
Yeah.
And so I really put those two on the bottom.
Yeah, that Sardak Dreadnought is so cool.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
That can be a game changer for you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think there's also, we were trying to come up with more ways to define just, like, generalizations of these factions. And one thing I wrote down is just that, like, you've got factions that start strong and peter out, and you've got factions that start weak but can snowball.
Should we talk about the SAR thing at all? Like, the pattern that we're seeing of, like, the SAR story being so defined.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, it's
I feel like that's a pattern. And we've seen it so many times now that it's becoming, like, a cliche to talk about how SAR, flies around the map, is very strong early, and then just like kind of always falls off. Yeah. Like, almost every time.
Right. Yeah, there's something about you swing too hard early because it's like, I got so much money, I can just get, like, these gigantic fleets. And I think maybe what we'll start to see is SARP are more willing to bank a bunch of trade goods so that they can hold on later on. There's going to have to be some strategy where it's like, it's not all just about the Star Ball. You do need a backup space stock out there because you need to be able to hold on for the late game. But then at the same time, a lot of times Star still wins early. So it's like, it's still a good strategy to just push really, really hard because a lot of games you just win.
It will happen.
I think the best way we defined this was, Hunter, you said every single faction has a cone.
Yeah.
Every faction has the different ways they could win.
Right.
And this is where we were saying earlier, we tried to suggest the most conservative approach, but there's always more approaches with every single faction. But Jolnar has this ridiculously wide cone that just covers pretty much everything in the game.
Right, because obviously the tech VPs they're not even, you don't even think about it.
And
you get them automatically.
And you probably are going to get trade goods automatically because ERES Siphons is right there on your way.
Sure, and you could sell your research promissory
for more
note
money.
For more,
like, you just don't have to worry about anything. Compare that to the Winu, where it's like you have the most narrow cone of anything imaginable.
It's weird because when we talk about it in that way, I realize that the soul cone is actually pretty narrow, or at least the ideas that people put into practice is narrow. It's just that it's such a strong play that we just see a lot of success.
Soul has a longer cone. It is still very narrow, but it takes them a very long distance.
Right.
I think that will be an interesting way to maybe try to structure a tier list. I think going forward, something I would like to do in the future is like regularly put out just like stupid tier lists, just like a tier list that ranks all the factions based on this criteria.
Right.
And I think a cone criteria faction tier list will be useful.
Yeah, it will be interesting to look at the factions and not necessarily break down like how strong we feel like their options are, just like how many options
how many
they
things
seem to have.
Can you do? Right?
Yeah.
Because when it comes down to it in TI, having a bunch of options could just lead to victory because it's like, well, I can always change course. I can always try something different.
Right.
Whereas Winu, you just, when you don't get your thing, you don't have your thing and your cone doesn't go any wider and okay, darn, that game didn't work out for Winu. But any weak faction with a wide cone could maybe still pull off some maneuvers.
Yeah. Well, where do we want to go with this next? What do we feel like, I don't know, with the guides and everything that we've done thus far, what are some things that, like, it's obviously a flawed thing to do, what we've done.
Right.
There's no way you can really capture all the randomness of the game.
Yep.
But also, like, me and you, we are as people. Players, we are just two people, and so we only play as ourselves.
Right.
So
this came up in my Ghost guide. And I kind of think I mentioned it in the Yin guide, but yeah, the idea that like people know I'm a somewhat aggressive player just by nature. Like I cannot stop myself from gunning for every single VP that is available to me, even if it sacrifices a lot of my board position. That's why I'm so proud of my Arborec game from the other day, because it's like one of the few times I've told myself, no, you have to stop and you have to wait a minute. But generally speaking, I push so hard, and that makes some factions work less for me, and it also shapes a lot of my guides. A lot of my guides get written from a perspective of someone who is trying to gun for things. So like my Mentak guide, I think that PDS can be very good as Mentak, but I definitely didn't talk up PDS very much in that guide because it's not something I tried to its fullest extent. I didn't just try to do a full PDS Mentak, and that could totally work as Mentak. I have no idea. I'm not that right kind of player to do it. And so I'm really curious to see, and I would love to see suggestions from different types of players to give us, completely new takes on factions that are coming from a non-mat perspective.
Right. I want to ask this actually. Here's something I'm thinking about. What do you feel like as players, like what do you recognize as what would be my like Achilles heel as a player? Like, what do you think is the thing that I run up against the most? And I'm bringing up the topic, so I'm going to let you think about what mine is. But I'm going to go ahead and say what I think yours is.
Okay.
I feel like the thing that has kind of changed the game for you with Twilight Imperium 4 is command counter economy.
Yeah.
Because I feel like how things used to work for you is that you were better at striking for every VP possible, but doing it in such a way where we couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, now it feels like if you're playing a a faction that struggles with command counter economy or doesn't have like a good access to lots of command counters, maybe they have other priorities that they have to get done. I feel like you complain about this with Ghosts a lot.
Absolutely.
Then that limits you a lot.
More than it would limit a normal other player.
Right. I think it forces you, because you always like to strike out as for VPs in the way that you do.
I'm overly opportunistic, and so I need the fuel for opportunity,
which is actually command counters.
Right.
Like that, when it comes down to it, your opportunity to strike at someone and them not be able to strike back at you or do anything about it, it all comes down to command counters.
Yep.
And the thing is, what will happen is that even if your command counter economy isn't going well, you will manage it to the point of like, well, I can still make the play, and I'm still going to do it.
I have one fleet supply, but...
Right. Even though you can't, because the economy isn't working for you, you can't prevent other people from getting... I feel like in TI3, the way it worked out is you were able to do that. I remember it would be more like you would activate a space and then, well, that's...
Darn.
Yeah. But that's not in the cards for every faction anymore. There are some factions where that is technically true.
Yeah.
But I feel like those are the ones that you struggle the most with.
For sure. I think for you... I'm having trouble coming up with a good Achilles heel for you, but
I'm just the best.
Because you're just the best.
Because I'm just the best.
What I think I see more often with you, though, in other games is it's more of a meta thing, and it's you... This is mostly directed at me, because of how much we've played with each other.
Right.
But you like to make more assumptions about what someone may or may not pay for something. And I think other players are willing to experiment and are willing to ask. A lot of players are just like, you want to give me 3 trade goods for this promissory note? And most of the time it's like, no, what, are you kidding me? 3 promissory or 3 trade goods? That's not worth it.
Right.
But at least they're asking, and it keeps this bargaining thing on the table.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we'll finish a game, and whether you won or not, there will be a play where you're like, I just felt like I didn't have any other choice but to make that offer to you. And in my head, I'm thinking, I don't know. If you'd made the offer, I have no idea how I would have felt about it in the moment. Because it also doesn't take into account people, how people sort of put on the blinders to certain things in games. And so you just forget that you needed those 2 trade goods for something else. And when Jolnar shows up and says, here's my promissory note, will you give me 2 trade goods? You go, oh yeah, I would love to have the Jolnar promissory note. And then one round goes by and you go, no, I needed those 2 trade goods to get a victory point. And now I'm behind. Right. And if you had just put yourself out there to make the deal, people would be willing to take you up on it, and you might make more than you think you can make.
I agree. I think that I have kind of gotten to this weird, like, different space in TI where I'm more interested in the factions that can, like, kind of issue ultimatums, less than the factions that wheel and deal.
Right.
Because I just feel like I can't negotiate as well as I used to. I don't know what it is, but I am not... I'm much better now at recognizing an opportunity where I have the upper hand and taking advantage.
Yeah.
And I actually feel like I like that type of play more. I used to love Hakan TI3, but I think now that when it comes to negotiating, things are more complex. I've actually realized I'm not as much into negotiation.
Well, I think that's why Hakan was your favorite TI3 race, because TI3 Hakan was holding people over the barrel.
Right.
I've got 2, 3 cost trade agreements. You're not going to get a better deal. And so that was the power of Hakan. That's not the power of Hakan anymore.
No,
the power of Hakan is you have the most access to wheeling and dealing, but you didn't actually wheel and deal in TI3. You were just very good at holding people over that barrel.
Right.
So yeah, I definitely think that's true. What in the guides, Hunter, are you most proud of? What do you think you nailed and has continued to be true, or what is something you think like you uncovered that you hadn't heard people talking about before we did, and you're just really glad got out there? What are you most proud of?
Well, it was, I really liked the Necro guide because we got to kind of break the way that the flagship actually operated, because there were so many questions about it. And that is actually how it worked with the whole
a million ground forces.
Amazing defensive unit that it is.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool. It was good being able to say, hey, this is how Soul works, even though now it feels really obvious.
Yeah. At the time, there weren't that many people
right, like
driving
people were
that
saying,
point home.
People were saying that they were really strong, but it like figuring out how they worked, that felt really good. I like the Muat episode in the end.
Yeah.
Like, I like what it became, but it took a lot out of me to
Right.
get it to where it was.
Right.
I do feel like the Muat episode, like, this is your best shot at it. I think it's just a really hard faction to play.
Yeah.
But yeah, of all the guides, I feel like those are the ones that I feel the most proud of. I also just like, I think, my taste in factions have changed now. Like,
absolutely.
Kind of buoying off of that last point.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like I like different factions. I'm really into Necro these days.
Yeah.
Like, I like Necro, and I didn't really care for Necro in TI3.
Yeah, and you no longer really care for Hakan, which is just like the biggest surprise in the
like,
world.
It's like I'm just not. You know what it is the time sensitive nature of wheeling and dealing. I am more interested in like making a quick play.
Yeah.
And I also feel like I don't like to reveal as much about myself. That's the problem. So that's what it comes down to, is that when you're Hakan, you kind of have to like
just be an open book.
You have to be an open book with people. Like we've talked about how there are those people that have that like I show all of my action cards all the time.
Yeah.
Like
that's terrifying.
I realize that I am more into being a pretty secretive and deceptive player.
Yeah.
And now if you want to be heavy negotiation, you kind of have to be more and more open, especially with, I feel like, the way the meta has evolved.
Right.
And so now I'm just more into the races that like they get a thing and now you have to deal with that. Like I love the extra with PDS network. Like, that is just, I love Extra with their full-on PDS network and flagship, because that is just like a resource that lasts forever.
Right.
Like, as long as those exist, they're great.
Yeah.
What
about, I talked about my regrets.
Yeah, what are you most proud of?
Okay,
we need to talk about that.
Sure.
We need to talk about what you feel like is the best that we did.
It's so funny because I'm trying to think of if I liked the Winu or Ghost guide in the long run, because I'm trying to think of was it worth all the pain, and I don't know if I'm most proud of those, but I am really, even though it just came out last week, I'm really proud of that Yin guide.
I'm proud of it too, dude. I think you did a really good job.
It took me a long time to accept what was truly great about the Yin, to even my own fault. Like, I think there were plenty of people who knew what was good about Yin months ago, but the thing is, we had decided pretty early on that we were saving the Yin for the end. Right. So I hadn't been playing Yin games hardly at all for almost all of these, number of months. And Yin doesn't get chosen that often, probably partially because we dog on them so much, so everyone who listens to the podcast just assumes, oh yeah, then they're definitely not worth picking.
Right.
And so we just had not seen hardly any games with them, and then the first 2 games I played were train wrecks. I mean, they were really horrible.
Yeah, you really messed up.
But coming to the realization of like where the real power in them is felt really satisfying, and I've not just done, like, I've won 2 games with them, and I don't feel like I'll ever do poorly with them.
Yeah.
Ever. Like, I don't really see a situation where I'm, like, dead last as the Yin.
Yeah, focusing on ground forces in general just feels like one of the most stable strategies that you can do in Twilight Imperium.
Yeah.
And they're good at that, and that's why I love where we got with Yin. I think, honestly, I kind of think of Yin now as, like, maybe the dead center, like, faction as far as like how good they are, like right in the middle of everybody.
Right. There's plenty that are worse, but there's plenty that are better, and you just got to play a solid game.
Right.
We talked about some of our regrets. I talked about the Nalu. You talked about Arborek, suggesting diplomacy with Arborek. But I think the bigger thing is, and we've talked about this constantly, but Hunter and I have always been very open about how bad we are
with promissory notes.
Notes. But what I think we have learned, we're finally able to define it in a new way. It's not just that Matt and Hunter are bad with promissory notes and you got to tell us how to use them. This comes back to that same point, Hunter, we were just talking about, of why you're like not as good with Hakan anymore, is you got to just be willing to use them.
Right.
What we learned about promissory notes is when you think a promissory note isn't good, still try to sell it at every single possible opportunity,
Right.
because then you might find when people are, for some reason, like, even if you yourself don't think you would buy it in that instance, try to sell it because someone else might.
Well, because you don't know what's going on in their head.
Exactly.
Like, they might perceive a need for it.
All trade operates sort of that way, and I think that took us a long time to just be open to trying any sort of trade out with anyone. Even still now, it's not like we're even great at that right at this moment, but it's something we're starting to uncover for ourselves, is like, just put the deal out there and see if anyone will take you up on it. Don't, never give away too much, but like, always be primed and ready to be bought or to sell something.
Right. And always keep in mind what people have that they can sell you.
Right.
Like, their abilities are sort of an extension of your own abilities if you can get a hold of them.
Exactly.
Right. Which is why Jolnar should buy the Sardak racial promise
Yes.
story. We haven't had that one in a while. That's a fun one. What do you think is the list of all of the, like, Space Cats, Peace Turtles, like, drinking game style phrases? Like, what are all of those?
I do not want to do this right now.
With a wide brush. All right. Well, actually, here I thought of a new question. Something kind of fun and, like, a little bit definitive here at the end. We've learned so much in our journey.
Okay.
What is your favorite and least favorite thing about Twilight Imperium 4th edition?
That's fun. Okay.
All the way across.
Specifically
the
with
board.
with 4th edition, I'm a cynical person, so I'll start with my least favorite first.
Yeah, do it.
Here's what I have come to find out I don't love about
Twilight
TI
Imperium.
4.
Yeah.
And it is that amongst all of these incredibly random factors and all these variables, which is why it is replayable and why it is fun, they have put in a fairly static win condition.
Yeah.
And that win condition, it turns out, ends up being quite random. This is assuming all players are on equal footing. But if all players are on equal footing, randomness will decide who gets the right secret objectives and which public objectives favor someone else, and if you are in the right pie slice.
Right. There's a lot of RNG in the game.
It is so much more common for us to see one player do pretty well almost the entire game and then probably win, versus the person who just, like, started with a pretty horrible start and, oh wow, they came from nothing. Like, that is so rare to see someone with the worst pie slice and never draw a single good secret objective. That person doesn't win. You just don't win.
Right.
And that sort of feels like a limiting factor of TI. It's just like, I don't think it's a problem that can be solved, because the only way to solve it is to lose a lot of the great stuff. But I think as a player, you have to accept that part of it. And honestly, like, this is my other regret of doing strategy guides in general, is you just can't think of Twilight Imperium as that intense of a strategy game.
Right.
It's a grand opera. Like, it is a space opera, and it's bigger than having a perfect strategy. Axis and Allies has things like famous plays like Operation Sea Lion, where everyone knows, like, the build order for it and how you do it and how you...
Right.
You don't have that in Twilight Imperium, and I don't want that in Twilight Imperium.
No.
But it just sucks that the payoff for that is sometimes a game is just won because that guy over there got lucky.
Right.
Darn.
Just got the right series of victory points.
So I think you have to reframe your brain, and then that doesn't seem like such a bad thing. But that's, in doing the strategy guides, that's what's given me the most pain. Is like, we're trying to play so strategically, and we keep getting up against, well, that game was completely random and ruined my chance of trying that thing.
And we just can't forget that it's also a thematic game.
Right.
I have the exact same least favorite as you, basically. I mean, I feel like, maybe the way I would, like, fluff it a little is victory points.
Yeah.
I wish we just had so many different...
More.
I wish there was a huge deck of possible
especially
victory
secret
points.
objectives. I want
just
double.
a million billion.
Yeah,
no,
right.
I'm not even saying just
You
secret.
just
I want more publics, especially
Sure,
stage
no,
one
of course I want
publics.
more, but, like, I feel like I want 15 action phase secret objectives.
Yeah.
I want everyone to have access to pulling off maneuvers that are worth an immediate point, rather than, like, oh, maybe you got one.
Right. The victory points in general seem to be the most, like, I think, like, streamlined part of the game that like I wish had so much more variance to it.
Right. They actually were very conservative with how they designed victory points.
Right.
And the rest of the game they were just like, and then you can do this, and Sar can build on the move, and Arboret can build on the move. But the victory points will be 10 resources and 8 resources and 8.
Yeah.
And just they stripped it down to be very simple, which is a good design, but it just makes for frustrating moments. I think my favorite thing though is the flip side of that, which is like our best games have been the ones where the story of what happened is what we continue to talk about. And that's why we started this podcast in the first place.
Yeah.
Is just expressing the fun of the game, not the intensity of the strategy. The strategy plays into that fun, but at the end of the day, what you remember is those plays of the week that we do every single week. And what you remember is the stuff that we feature on This Imperium Life. Like those stories of just like, I couldn't believe my friend of 15 years would backstab me in such a heartless way. And just those moments stand out so much. And like, I'm so much more willing now to look for those moments and set some of the strategy aside after having done these guides.
Yeah.
I'm just like so anxious to do more games where it's just like, I just want to see crazy stuff happen.
Yeah.
In service of points, again, this is hard to suggest for new players because you can't just tell a new player, just try to have fun, like just do crazy stuff, because they will do things that break the game. If one player is just not trying to win, it does break the game. But if everyone is feasibly trying to win and trying to make cool stuff happen, no game compares to Twilight Imperium.
That's true. That's very true. Well, what's up with this show? What's we doing next?
We've said it 100 times.
What?
The show's over.
Right. Oh,
we
yeah,
said
forgot.
it. That's
forgot.
it.
Well,
we're done. Show's over.
Bloop.
Space Cats Pizza Dolls is canceled.
We're right now. We are riding into the sunset on.
Is it for the running? No,
obviously that is not true. We have so many ideas for episode. Honestly,
I am more excited for
this
the
show
future.
is free now.
Yes. Yeah,
it is.
We're free from the confines of
Literally.
explaining basic stuff to everyone. Now, anytime someone on Reddit asks, like, what should I do as the soul? You guys can just link the episode and the Reddit posts of all the like follow-up conversations that happen and just give that to them, and we can move on and talk about the crazy stuff. So what kind of stuff
Let's tease them. Let's let them know what's coming up next. What are we doing?
We're just going to throw a list at you because we don't want to. We can't even explain these in detail because it's not ideas. We know exactly where we're going to go with them. But one of them is we want to do episodes where we talk about faction matchups, and this is specific to like obvious links. You know, Hakan and Mentak. They have a crazy relationship. We barely got to touch on it in both of their guides. We would love to do an episode where it's just like, let's explore every single thing that Mentak and Hakan can do.
My idea with that is I want me and Matt to play a series of games where we both play the exact same faction with these specific relationships, and we talk about basically all the different ways it shook out and all the different like dynamics that we found between those two factions. Another thing we want to do is...
hang on. It's important to note in that is not the next arc, though.
There's no arc.
There is no arc.
Not anymore.
So everything we're about to suggest, these are things that we were going to do sporadically, and I think for a long time the show is going to be a little bit more free in its structure. There's not just a like, you know, I know within a few weeks there's going to be a thing about the yin. It's like no. I think the only structure we might have is we want to get better about... we really were just trying to sprint for the finish line of these guides, and now we're going to get back into like, hey, you know, we're supposed to do a Galactic Council episode every single month, and we want to do that. Like, we want to make sure that happens. We want to do more roundtables. We want to do This Imperium Life more often. We said we would do that once like every other month, and it's been quite a long time since the second episode. Next week will be This Imperium Life 3, and we hope 4 is not long after. And we want to make those sorts of things more regular. So if anything, our schedule is going to start to be a little bit more cyclical and less big arcs that we try to stretch on for months and months and months.
Right.
So what's the next thing we want to try to do?
We're definitely going to do more game summaries in general, just summaries of games that we played and talking about the games a little more in depth. We're trying to get better at note taking when it comes to games. And like also kind of a neat thing we've come up with is we would like to have some of our Discord players play a game of Tabletop Simulator that we would stream and then commentate on.
Right.
And then essentially take that commentary and kind of unpack it as an episode of the show.
This is something we will probably do with the Gen Con videos as well, but Gen Con's on a much bigger scale. We would love to just do this as a somewhat regular thing, just to like the two of us as outside people, not, right now we're always talking about like, well, in that game I was the Mentak and I was thinking this. It would be interesting to break down games from a completely third-party perspective and talk about from, knowing what we know about other people's hands. Well, we see that the Mentak is afraid of this happening right now, but we know that the Barony doesn't even have it, or, all of these situations where, having that third party look at it could really change how we understand like what is actually happening within the meta.
I also just feel like in doing this show, we have met so many people that play this game that have a lot of different ways of looking at it. And some of them honestly are more eloquent than we are and are like have a better grasp on certain things. And I think it would be great if we could create some opportunities for us to just kind of like give you their perspective as much as possible in a streamlined way.
Right. We want to do more roundtables with people from the community, people who have a lot to say about a particular topic, or like we said, doing these, streamed games. If there's one player that won the game, all right, let's bring them on the show. Let's talk about their success, yada, yada, yada. Like, we want to get everyone more involved in the show, because I think that's when it shines the brightest, is when more people are getting their fingers in the bits.
But don't think that we're not like going to be doing anything that resembles strategy guides in the future. We are really, obviously we're very committed to Twilight Imperium strategy, and we're not going to just abandon that part of the show. We are probably going to, as we go, pick up certain factions and kind of do a one more again kind of
another
deal.
take.
I know for sure, we've talked about it so much on the show how dissatisfied we are with the extra episode, it being the first one, especially, there are things that we got right, obviously. PDS, duh.
That's good.
PDS is good. At least we weren't so bad as to be like, oh, I don't know,
don't go for
PDS?
it.
Don't go for it. That'd be stupid. But we are probably going to pick certain factions up and look at them in a new light as we go.
I can't wait to revisit like Ghosts and try even more weird stuff with them, and just to try to see like, okay, Jolnar is this freeing. Let's give a specific guide on Jolnar of how to do this exact idea, things like that. Like trying to, now that we've done the more generalized, like this is what we think is good, I think we're going to try to do guides where it's like, this is the blank of Letnev. We want to go more in detail onto what it really takes to do that specific strategy.
Right. And if things change, like, I think we still very much reserve the right to do a V2. Everything we said, forget ignore that, delete that from the feed. It'll be gone forever. It won't be, but obviously we like to keep our mistakes just right there. We like to air the dirty laundry. But who knows? Maybe the way that people play the game will change so much that certain factions will just change. Like they just will be different.
Right. In addition to streaming some, TTS games, we want to do a tournament of our own someday. Now, we haven't wanted to talk about this very much, just because we got to get through Gen Con. We got to see what one even looks like before we're even willing to like start taking a stab at it. But part of the buildup of trying to do a Space Cats Peace Turtles tournament is we have to figure out what the correct rules are for that tournament. If we're going to try to have something, really, really big and awesome, we want to settle on all the best possible rules. And so that's probably going to take some time, and there will probably be plenty of episodes where we're trying to break down different approaches to race selection and whatnot. So it's going to be a project that we're working on of let's find the proper rule set for a tournament.
Right. But I feel like we're bringing it up here mostly because we want to put the call out.
Yep.
Like we want to know everyone who's starting to run tournaments for Twilight Imperium, and I see them like popping up here and there. We want to know all of the ways that you handle tournament play and tournament rules and race selection, all of the nitty gritty of all that, because after Gen Con, we are going to have to figure out what Space Cats Peace Turtle tournament is going to play like.
Yeah, basically. I think we'll want to do episodes where we feature. We did kind of our house rule episode where we talked about our how we divvy up the galaxy and stuff like that. But I think we're going to want to do more features, and even going as far as like, if you come up with a few homebrew races, I don't know, maybe it would be fun to start just like, all right, here's community expansion 1. Here's like a bunch of just random ideas to throw out there, some of our favorites or whatever. I think we're going to slowly start doing that as we get further and further away from this introductory material. We're going to want to start saying, what else can you do with your copy of Twilight Imperium? What other house rules can you implement, and what other variants can you throw in
we
there?
already talked about last week that we have some like
weird goofy
race stuff for ourselves that we kind of just keep in a little folder.
Right.
But I think because we kind of like touch up on them every once in a while.
Yep.
And I think at some point we will probably start
have
putting that
a
stuff
release.
out. Fantasy Flight, still hasn't
Feel
let us
free.
all know. Yeah. But we've I'll say this, if it doesn't look like there's a Twilight Imperium expansion in the works, then we'll just do one.
We'll just do our own.
Yeah,
and
you can't stop us.
Yeah,
you can't.
As long as we do it for free, you can't stop us, right? Is that how law works?
I'm not sure how law works. I've never known any laws or how any of them function. But I will say this: if Fantasy Flight, I'm putting it out there. If you don't keep throwing more Twilight Imperium at my face every couple years, then we're just going to throw Twilight Imperium at our own faces.
Yeah, we'll just drown ourselves in faces. The other thing we want to do is, and this is some smaller stuff, but just like, I would love to do episodes specifically about the different player counts. We never talk about 3 and 4 player games, and that's going to be something we need to cover.
We need to talk about how good Winnu is in the 4-player setting.
Exactly.
That needs to be talked about.
Also, 14-point games. I'm sure we're going to get close here to where Hunter and I start playing 14-point games way more often.
Right.
And so we're going to want to talk about how the game changes for different factions.
My prediction,
based on those.
Sar goes right into the toilet, and Arboret gets better.
Way better.
Yeah.
Right. The other big one that we're super excited to try out, and I think this is specifically feeding off of the strategy guides and how basically I'm not going to say we're sick of playing Twilight Imperium, but like Hunter was saying, he needed like a 2-week break. But for me, it's more that until this past week, I haven't played a different board game besides Twilight Imperium since December.
Right.
I have only played Twilight Imperium, and I have played it
You're welcome.
2 or 3 times a month. But what that means is Hunter and I want to play other games. And no, we're not going to start some other podcast about some other board game. But we are so obsessed with Twilight Imperium that we can't help but look at other big strategy games and compare them to Twilight Imperium. Especially TI3 is like a flagship of strategy board gaming. Mm-hmm. And so we want to, at some point, play a few games of other board games. Game of Thrones board game, Axis and Allies, Rex, War of the Ring, stuff like that. We want to play those.
Maybe Eclipse.
Eclipse? Boo. Sure. Ew, gross. Boo. But maybe we play those, get a few games in, and try to do episodes where we just compare the feeling of the games and if it's let's make recommendations to people on games they might like similar to TI, there's that. But then even more so, just like, let's compare what you're getting and what kind of strategy you're pulling off, and what do we think they pulled from TI, and what do we think TI pulled from other games, that sort of stuff. We just are really into analyzing more board games.
Yeah, I'm really excited about doing those episodes. I don't if that part made you feel weird.
Yeah.
We are dedicated to giving you your weekly dose of TI. Do not worry.
There would never be like 2 weeks back to back where we don't talk about TI very much.
Yeah, I just think it might be fun to like kind of break down TI in that way, in a kind of critical analysis way, and look at other board games and be like, all right, what do we feel like? Like even in the documentary that Shut Up and Sit Down made, they mention that the Game of Thrones board game is inspired Twilight Imperium.
Yeah, right. Or vice versa. Whatever. They're the two. Both are by Christian T. Peterson, and they are very linked off of each other.
Right.
TI4 has mechanics based off of Game of Thrones board game.
Right.
That is certainly true. And going forward, just like we're also open to suggestions of other things you want to see. We've always had this. Part of the first round strategy guides is because you guys called for them so much.
Right.
I don't think we were like that itching to do a bunch of
it
guides
just got
over
brought
each
up,
session,
and then people were like, yeah, you should do that.
Yeah, and so we want to just keep hearing what you guys like. And we've done that before with other things. That's what the Galactic Council is for as well. But even more so, when we decided to do the agenda phase, or the agendas episode, that was mostly because people were saying, I really wish you guys could break down
all the
agenda cards, and we were like, you know what, that's a pretty great idea. So please always give us suggestions of episodes you'd like to see, because more than likely we want to do them. We've got lots of episodes to fill this podcast, and we have lots of huge giant brains filled with TI experience to just explore all the different territory. And hopefully with all of this means maybe I can get the Board Game Geek calendar in somewhat stable array. The problem with the strategy guides was we had to finish so many games, and we never knew if we were going to get enough games in to finish a particular guide, and so the calendar kept getting thrown out of whack. But now I feel like we'll be better about planning episodes further in advance, getting a little bit of pre-errata from our different Patreon supporters, and hopefully we can have a pretty regular schedule that isn't just like, who knows what we're going to get next week, because nobody's communicating any of that with us. We hope to be a little bit more open about like what's coming up in the future.
Yeah, because like now that we're out of the first round strategy guides, like you won't know week to week like what it doesn't have the same like, well, we can expect this. Like you it was really cool the way everyone was expecting the Yin episode, and it enabled us to do some
a big
things.
Mean jerk thing.
Right.
Do we need to talk about that?
I feel like it's for the errata.
Okay.
Right?
Well,
and I feel like we're ready. Are we ready for the errata?
Let's do some errata.
Yeah. Oh, man. All right.
Nailed you! Ugh! Man!
We got you.
We got you.
Do you feel how we got you? Do you remember when we got you?
Got you so good.
Yeah, we like totally pranked you, dude. You were like gonna listen, and then we got you.
Like, boom, 10
we got
minutes,
you for
10
like,
minutes of your day burned, and then like another whole day.
Yeah, we got you for like almost 12 hours, dude. Yeah. Like, we got you.
Feels good. Feels good to get.
So what's the errata part? None.
We got you.
We got
idiot.
you. Yeah.
Stupid. No, we have some real errata on the In Brotherhood. What sucks is because we got you so hard, you were in shock. You guys were in a catatonic state,
right?
And you weren't able to produce quite as much errata as normal. There was more just people talking about how hard we got you.
Yeah,
but we do have a couple of real.
We got you. Can it be said once more? We got you. And you know what? Next week we might get you again.
We might just get you every week.
Maybe we'll just start getting you every.
If it's that easy to get you, we're just gonna keep getting you.
Hey, guess what? Next week we're gonna do this Imperium Life, right?
All right. This one's from Orion Eve, and Orion says, "Let me do it in my best Orion Eve voice."
Yeah, good.
The value of Daxiv animators should not be downplayed. Its synergy with indoctrination is amazing. If an enemy planet has only one defending infantry and you invade with one of your own infantry, you pay 2 influence. You gain 1 infantry from indoctrinate, and then you gain another infantry from Daxiv because you actually won the invasion without rolling a single die. This, in my opinion, increases the value of Cruiser 2 and a red skip, so you can snipe a lonely planet somewhere out there with a single defender. If they want to take it back, they'll have trouble because in theory you can indoctrinate one of their 4 infantry, making it a 3v4 in your favor, also with a single cruiser hovering above the planet that they risk getting bonsai'd. Yeah, this is one that I kind of just like straight up missed, and it's mainly because in my game I got too enticed by skipping Daxiv for Hyper, which I do think is good, but no, Daxiv is like in no better hands than the Yin Brotherhood.
Right.
The fact that you go in with 1 ground force, do not fight anything, and end up with 3 ground forces is madness and plays even further into their strengths of having really good ground forces. I love your Cruiser 2 idea, and it's something that I had been trying to implement, and the reason I couldn't ever suggest Cruiser 2 first is because more often I needed the security of Infantry 2, because people still want to go for me, and I think doing this Cruiser 2 strategy is sort of the same problem that I had with Ghosts, which is like, if you're going to do this early on, you are going to have some enemies. Now, theoretically, you have really good ground forces that are defending planets, and the enemies don't matter. But more often than not, I ran into some problems if I really hurt people too hard, too fast.
It just depends on the order that you get the tech in, really.
Yeah.
That's all it comes down to.
I think I made this point of Infantry 2 first, then either Space Dock 2 or Cruiser 2, whichever makes sense. And I think Orion Eve gives us a really amazing reason why Cruiser 2 you might want to go for first. If the Mechatol play isn't able to work for you, this is the kind of crazy stuff you can pull off with Cruiser 2 if you get it fast enough.
I mean, I think with Daxiv, you might be able to just pull off some mid-game stuff without even having Infantry 2 yet. You know what I mean?
It's true. No,
I feel like Infantry 2 with Daxiv plus Cruiser 2,
right?
That's like a great late game. Like
It is.
That's you hanging on.
I don't think I'll ever be able to convince myself to get 2 green tech and then not get infantry 2. Like, get 2 green tech. All right, now let me go over here and get plasma scoring real quick.
You're
and then
right,
get
you're
Cruiser
right.
2. Now, if you have the red skip, yes, by all means, nab up Cruiser 2 real quick. But if you don't have the red skip, it's a little bit harder to suggest. If you have a red skip, it's kind of an automatic.
I really liked this one, though. That interaction we hadn't really thought of. Yeah. And it's super cool. This next one's from RoboFish. Good old RoboFish. I do think you underplay how much of a problem the Mind Net are. Their super dreadnoughts carry 2 ground forces. They'll brush your destroyers aside. And if you don't have a PDS, Hera will win in the end.
Yeah, we mentioned that Lizix has a relationship with Yin or kind of counters them, but I don't know why I didn't play this up more. Like,
I actually think we just didn't see them together that much.
Yeah, we weren't seeing them in the same game, so we didn't see that encounter actually happen. And if we had, we would have just been so apt to point out how obviously Lizix, can crush Yin if they want.
I'm going to do a little errata within this errata because I forgot I wanted to bring up in the episode proper, but I wanted to say that the worst part of every episode, the dinkiest part of every first round strategy guide was the counters section.
Oh, for sure.
It was a Calvin ball. It was just all over the place. And we always okay, so the idea of like we were going to do a first round strategy guide for every race and look at them all singularly. The idea that we would then also within each episode consider them versus every other faction.
Right, it's too much.
You weren't going to see that at every interaction. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like
impossible.
Yeah. So that was definitely a part of the show that was never my favorite and always kind of difficult.
Yeah.
But thank you, Roberfish.
Yes.
And I think this was one of the things that I think we got the most errated on most frequently was like, here's
always the counters. Here's another counter. It was promissory notes and it was counters. Right. And those are the two things we always needed to fix.
Biggest blind spots.
Yep.
All right. Is it rundown time? It's rundown time.
It's Hunter's favorite time of the week where he gets to blather like an idiot.
You can go to Twitter for game updates and announcements. You can go to our Facebook, or our Twitter is called Space Cats Pod, by the way. Yeah. You can go to our Facebook for announcements, and also if you just want to ask us questions, if you want to send us messages where you say things like, "Oh my God, the show's so great! Oh my God, Hunter's my favorite! Oh my God, what does Matt even do?" You can go to Reddit Twilight Imperium every week for posts and discussion that Matt does.
That's what I do. That's the part of the show that I contribute.
Right. You can go to our Board Game Geek Guild for discussions, and you can also see the calendar that hopefully will be more accurate going forward, as we don't have these like weird deadlines we're always looking for.
Yeah.
You can go to our email. You wouldn't really go to it, would you? You'd just send an email.
I go there.
Oh, yeah, Matt goes there. And if you've been able to hack into our email, then you've most certainly gone there. But the email is spacecatspturtles@gmail.com. And what we like to receive at the email is This Imperium Life submissions and Plays of the Week. Please send us both of those. We need those. We have, I'm sure, lots of This Imperium Life segments now, and I'm really excited about next week. You can go to our Discord for fun, in quotes, conversation and Patreon benefits. Please rate us on your podcast app of choice, especially Apple Podcast /iTunes. One more thing. I, Hunter Donaldson, am a comedian, and Tuesday, June 26th, which will be a week from the time that you're hearing this, I will be at the Helium Comedy Club competing in Portland's Funniest Person contest. My show is at 10 p.m., The tickets are $10, but if you call ahead and you say, "Hey, I know Hunter," they will give them to you for $5. Please come out and support me as a comedian. If you want to look up my comedy, I'm on YouTube, just Hunter Donaldson Comedy. You'll see me right there performing at Helium, actually. And yeah, I would just love the support. If you love the show, if you think that, I'm funny and that Matt is just okay and like whatever, he's fine, but it's not, could be better.
Could be better if Hunter were there more.
Right. If Hunter really showed up more, and then, I want to thank some Patreoners.
It's funny because I've been trying to feverishly get the Patreoner thanks ready and get the play of the week ready. So I've been ignoring everything Hunter has been saying, and I just now realized he's been talking crap on me this whole time. So that's really fun.
Right. I want to thank Chris Bacon. I want to thank Mahat Maniac. I want to thank Jesper Person.
That's his title. The Mahat Maniac, Jesper Person.
Maniac, Jesper Person. I want to thank the Cartographer of Chaos. In Mac We Trust.
Oh yeah,
that is such a good.
That is a good one.
Title for
In Mac We Trust makes has multiple times on our stream games when we were like, "Hey everyone, make us a map." He's the only one who shows up and does it reliably. Raptor has helped. Other people have helped him, but like In Mac We Trust has always been like, "All right, I'm jumping on it." And so
he got a new title. Nightmare map.
Yeah,
we played on it. Ended up loving.
That's the best map we've ever played on. Yeah.
Matt, do you want to do the play of the week? I just got to do all the really fun stuff.
The really fun stuff.
My favorite part.
All right. This one is from our dear friend Laura. And
Empress Laura.
Empress Laura. That's right. Let me make sure that's right. There's more to it. Pirate Empress.
Pirate Empress Laura.
Laura has this to say. Is Yin's devotion and direct hit a combo? I frantically PM'd this to 3 different people on Discord and asking the rules in chat. Entering round 6, I, the Yin Brotherhood, had 7 points. I had the secret objective in hand, destroy another player's flagship, and control of Mechatol Rex. The person ahead of me was the speaker, and it was 4 players. I used Public Disgrace so that I could get Imperial, and then I managed to pick up technology. I could taste my victory. I activated technology first turn to get Space Dock 2 and Infantry 2 to be prepared to earn Develop Weaponry, the 2-unit upgrade public objective. I then popped Imperial to go from 7 points to 9. And Xcha started coming for me. He activated a system next to my home system and took some planets. He had Warfare. I knew that when he activated Warfare, I would build my flagship and immediately move in and get blown up. But just in case, I had learned that devotion and direct hit is indeed a combo. And what a better way to win the game as Yin than to destroy their greatest ship.
Wow. Oh.
You don't even need the flagship. I keep telling people, you don't need the flagship. It doesn't work. You can do more. You can get victory points without the flagship. You specifically can't get victory points with the flagship. And all you need is direct hit and devotion.
All you need is devotion and direct hit. Bum, 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 bum. All you need is devotion and direct hit. We're so dumb.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Space Cat's Peace Turtles. And thanks to Ben Prunty for the use of his music. You can find more at benpruntymusic.com and benprunty.bandcamp.com. Pax Magnifica, Bellum Gloriosum.